Feed Lux your way with the Lux Cravings boxes from Taco Bell. There's the classic $5 box, the indulgent $7 box, and a whole new obsession in the $9 box, the Flamin' Hot Grilled Cheese Burrito. Try the Lux Cravings boxes at Taco Bell today.
Hey Bronco Nation, this is Boise State football wide receiver Ben Ford. I've had to face some setbacks on the field this past season, but toughness isn't about staying down. It's about getting back up. I am proud to represent Lithia Ford of Boise, where you can find the largest selection of Ford trucks that are built tough and, like me, handle the hits and keep pushing forward. Come check out the incredible inventory and competitive pricing at Lithia Ford of Boise. And when you buy here, you're not just getting a truck, you're supporting Boise State athletics and Lithia Ford NIL partnerships. Come see us at Lithia Ford of Boise, where Ford begins in Idaho.
Find your sun with Sun Cruiser Vodka Iced Tea. Made with real iced tea and real vodka. Cold, refreshing, and made for moments like these all year long. Let the good times cruise with Sun Cruiser.
As sports fans, we may cheer for different teams, but there's one thing that we can all agree on. We want the game to be big. And with 3 levels, 30 cabanas, a 143-foot screen, 6 clean pools, and endless cold drinks, it doesn't get any bigger or any better than Stadium Swim in Las Vegas. All sports, all seasons. It's more than a pool deck. Stadium Swim. It's the only thing like it in the world.
The final buzzer is sounded on another night of Mountain West basketball, and it's time to break down the action with Tom Moser on another night in the Mountain West, presented by Circus Sports. Headed to Las Vegas for the Mountain West tournament in March? Make sure to stay at Circa Las Vegas and watch all the action at Stadium Swim, where the sports are on 365 days a year. Another night in the Mountain West has interviews, analysis, opinions after the final Mountain West basketball game of the day wraps up. All BNN broadcasts come from the Sun Cruiser Studios. Sunny days call for Sun Cruiser Vodka Iced Tea, made with real iced tea and real vodka. It's refreshingly smooth and easy to drink. Crack open a Sun Cruiser and let the good times cruise. The title sponsor of Bronco Nation News is Lithia Ford of Boise. Check out our full inventory of vehicles online at lithiafordboise.com. Lithia Ford of Boise, where Ford begins in Idaho. Did your team just get a big win? Suffer a bad loss? Come discuss it with us. Send us a comment or question in the ICCU YouTube chat, or leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/BNN. Now let's go to the Sun Cruiser Studios and join Tom Moser for another night in the Mountain West on Bronco Nation News.
What's up, everybody? You're in the Sun Cruiser Studio here on another night in the Mountain West, Wednesday, February the 18th edition. A few minutes late, as I mentioned last night. Need to let BJ finish his Boise postgame show on his separate channel there. Their game had ended a little bit early, so we talked about that, and he went a little bit longer. A lot of stuff to talk about from a Boise perspective, so certainly not rushing him off, and I just followed him on, and as soon as he clicked off, I'm right on here. So only 2 games tonight. We'll see how many fans and folks Mountain West want to chat tonight. And so, maybe we won't go as long as we did last night. I pretty much guarantee we won't go as long as I did last night. But for however long as we go, we'll have good stuff to talk about. Hopefully, some of you are here to interact live. While we're at it, let's give Sun Cruiser a shout out. Go get your Sun Cruiser, and please subscribe to the pod here at Mountain West BNN. So again, just a 2-pack tonight. One game that was not super competitive. The other got interesting at the end, as we've kind of come to expect from UNLV games, right? I think next year moving forward, the Mountain West or CBS or Fox or whoever on certain nights should just always slot UNLV into that late time slot, right? It's like, and you'll have like a 70 to 80% strike rate as far as competitive games or something interesting happening, because they were outplayed for the entirety of the first 36, 37 minutes. And then all of a sudden, they just come roaring back and actually had the ball down 3 with a chance to tie. So, great response by them. Great job of sticking with it, not folding the tent up. They played better. I mean, they're not a perfect squad, but we know that. We knew that. And CSU did just enough to hang on. Butler was clutch at the foul line late. For how many fouls there were called in the first half of that game, it was a real slog to watch. They let them play more in the second half. And as a result, the Rams were only in the 1-1 down the stretch instead of the double bonus. And man, that adds pressure. You put a young guy up there on the line twice, not once, but twice, where he's where he's got to really make a front end or you're in trouble. And he makes not only both front ends, but both back ends too. 4 for 4 at the line to kind of salt that one away. So good job by the Rams. That's 3 in a row for them. Their goals are somewhat like we've talked about for several other teams now. Let's play our best basketball at the end of the season. Let's see what we can do for seeding purposes. We're going to have to pull a couple upsets, but maybe we pull an upset. Maybe somebody else pulls an upset, and we have to play somebody that's not a top dog. Who knows how it goes, right? I don't know. It's interesting because they played for sure. They obviously played without Pasquarelli tonight. They also played without MacIver tonight. Now, I and other Ram fans have been critical, and for pretty fair reason, of MacIver. He's a freshman, and so he's going to take his lumps. But his plus minuses, and I don't track this. I don't compare it. I'm sure there's a metric or a website somewhere that would. Okay, his plus minus have to be among the worst in conference play of anybody who gets like a more than garbage time minutes, right? I don't know if they have a cumulative plus minus or anything like that, but his plus minus is not very good. And I've said it before, Ali they were shorthanded earlier in the season. We know that. And so he was kind of pressed into action. Ali, I'm sure, wants to give him some run to see if he's the point guard of the future next year, or however, for the next few years. And he struggled. He hasn't handled it well. And he was out tonight, right? So I'm not going to look, he doesn't start and play 30 minutes. So this is not all a case of, well, all it needed was for him to be out and it frees everything up and they played much better. I think it certainly didn't hurt that he didn't come in and play 14 minutes tonight, because the minutes that he gives by and large are not very successful. That's why his plus minus is poor, right? But they did some other things well tonight too. They seemed to play a little bit faster. They were also, this just maybe it was their night. Maybe it was the fact that UNLV didn't really get after it defensively in the first half. But man, let me put the stats up, and then I'll shift to it for a minute here, and I'll get to some comments in a second. But their point, and it doesn't show it on the split box. Let me go to the visitor stats. I always like showing this one here. Their points per possession, 1.49. That's 1.5. It was over 1.6 with about 6 minutes left, because I looked at it. I knew it was through the roof. 61 possessions. It's not a super high amount. I mean, they've had plenty of games where they've been in the 50s because they just play so slow. 61 tonight, and they scored 1.5 points per possession. That's absolutely crazy. Again, that is really high number. So super efficient for the Rams. As I tweeted out there at the end, it was like a 2-on-2 game, because Recksteiner and Muniz were cooking tonight for the Rams. And of course, Gibbs, Lawhorn, and Jones for UNLV. Gibbs Lawhorn ends up with another 30-plus point game, 31, 11 of 21, 6 of 12, 3 of 3 from the free throw line. And Jones, 7 of 9 from the field, 6 of 9 from the line, 4 boards. So those two were sensational tonight. Hamilton was pretty good too, 13 points, 8 boards. His customary 4 fouls, which is kind of standard. But and Recksteiner and Muniz, as I mentioned, on the other side, Recksteiner 8 for 13, hit only 2 of 6, but he hit a big one late. Muniz 8 for 11, 3 of 4, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. And I just, he stepped into the starting role tonight with Pasquarelli out, and he played 38 minutes. I mean, You guys are tired of hearing me say it now. He should be starting. But again, whatever. He's playing starter minutes, and without two guards. I mean, it was obvious that he was going to start, but he played 30 minutes and he played 34 the other night when he didn't start. So, I mean, I think coach knows he needs him in the game. Maybe he just wants a spark off the bench. I really don't know what it is, but I would guess, and I'm sure there's some metric. I'll have to ask Steve or somebody else. He has to be like their most efficient player over the last month. Like, they've had some peaks and valleys. They hadn't played well in middle of January, even up until a week and a half ago. But now they ripped off 3 in a row. They've looked better starting in the second half against Wyoming. Tonight, I thought their first half was as well as they played in a long, long time. I mean, they were only up 8, but up 8 on the road. Williamson banks in a half quarter at the buzzer, or you're up 11, and Gibbs Lawhorn was 4 out of 6 for 3, or you're up even more. And they just played really good basketball. So they're playing better. They know they're not going anywhere postseason wise unless they make a serious run here in the conference tournament. And their only chance in the NCAA tournament is by winning the automatic bid. For a first-year coach, I'm sure it's not a goal of many programs these days, but I'm sure Coach Farouk Manesh and this group of guys who have come from different programs that don't have a lot of postseason experience or playing in, I don't think the NCAA tournament at all, especially like contributing minutes. They take an NIT bid, and maybe they would even take a bid in the Crown. I know the Crown's only an 8-team field this year, so that kind of limits the amount of teams that will get in there. But the other part of the issue is that because we're not going to get as many teams in the NCAA tournament, then like those teams, although let me get to that in a second, we may not get down that far in the pecking order to some of our teams in the secondary tournaments, right? Like last year, the year before, we had 4 teams, 6 teams. Then you don't need to go down as far to find the other teams. This year, if we only get 2 teams, which is the way it's trending, like I'll be surprised if we get 3. If we only get 2 teams, then they're going to select from the next couple that were in the big tournament last year to see if they want to play in the NIT and the Crown. Now that I think about it, I'm highly doubtful that San Diego State accepts a bid to play in the NIT, right? Like, it's just, I think it was North Carolina that turned down a bid a couple years ago. Last year, there were other teams from big conferences that turned a bid down. Now, we're not a big conference, but San Diego State, as we know, considers themselves like a little bit above the Mountain West. And to be fair, their goals are not to make the NIT, right? They've been in the Final Four a few years ago, Sweet 16 a couple years ago. Their goal is not to make the NIT. So I don't anticipate them, if they don't get in, accepting a bid into those lower tier tournaments. Now, the other schools, I think Grand Canyon would. I do think if San Diego State finds their way in and New Mexico doesn't, I think New Mexico would too. Again, first-year coach with Olin, a bunch of young guys. I think they would accept the bid. Nevada, don't know. He didn't last year in this spot when, it trickled down to them and they said no thanks. So who knows? We'll have to see what Nevada decides to do. I think Grand Canyon would. Boise, CSU, UNLV, that's your next batch. We'll have to see. I think Coach Farouk Manesh would like to play in a postseason tournament if he could. Now, it's going to require them to win a few more games here in the regular season, and then maybe, get a record that's appealing to some of those other fields, because, the record wasn't quite there. Now, as I said, they ripped off 3 in a row, but they're going to have to win a couple more, and they have some tough games. So we'll see if they can do that. But look, they look very good tonight. They shot the ball incredibly well. I didn't even look at that. 59% from the floor, and that's like in the paint, because they only shot 7 out of 20 for 3. Remember, in the non-con, when they were flying high and looking so great offensively, it was because they were shooting the crap out of the 3. They only shot 7 for 20 tonight, 35%. That means on their 2s, quick math tells me they shot 25 for 34 on 2s. Hence, they have 48 paint points. That's an incredible amount. Now, to be fair, UNLV had 42 as well, although 17 of those were on a fast break. Tyron Jones was doing his thing on the break, and Gibbs Lawhorn was as well. But 48 paint points for the Rams is pretty impressive. It doesn't speak a whole lot to UNLV's defensive intensity tonight, but look, credit the Rams. They don't have a ton of post players. It's not really the kind of offense they run, But, the big guys got it done tonight. Bemba had 13. Didn't really mention him yet. Jorgensen just had 8, but Jorgensen had 7 assists from that high post passing, the top of the key passing big man spot, which Medved / Farouk Manesh like their bigs to do. So that was pretty efficient as well. But look, great job offensively by the Rams. They held on. I mean, down the stretch there, they kind of panicked a little bit. They're missing a Pasquarelli, and as a result, Slater, who I thought gave pretty good minutes, Ali had Slater in down a stretch. He threw it away once. They almost threw it away again. And as I said, they did throw it away. It got deflected. And, I don't blame Hamilton for it. I mean, look, it's a quick moving play. You don't have a lot of margin for error when you're down that much, but man, and he missed the 3 anyway, but his foot's on the his heel catches the sideline, and he didn't even get a shot off. Like, you need to get that shot up, because what's the best way that you're going to score there? An offensive rebound, right? You can draw a foul, you can get to the line, you can get an and one, you can get a kick out off an offensive rebound. I mean, obviously you'd like the 3 to go in, but it rattled in and out, but it was waved off because his foot hit the sideline after the steal. And then Butler made a couple more free throws to seal it. So not the smoothest finish for the Rams, because, again, this was a 13-point game. This was kind of the opposite of what we've seen UNLV do before, right? I mean, they're usually the ones that have a lead and are trying to hang on for dear life. Tonight, they kind of went the other way and made the Rams play it out for 40 minutes. So credit to UNLV. I mean, disappointing loss again. They get swept by the Rams. They mentioned on the telecast there, it's the 4th win in a row for the Rams against the Rebels. So they swept them 2 years in a row. Obviously, 2 different coaches, Pastner last year. Kruger last year, Pastner this year. Same thing, Medved last year, Farouk Manesh this year. But 4 in a row against the Rebels for the Rams. I guess it's possible. Unlikely. I mean, they're probably in the – I don't think they both slip to the 8-9 range. That would require Fresno or Wyoming to get up into the 7 slot so that these two would play 8-9. I don't see them facing off again, because obviously CSU likes the matchups there. We've seen several now sweeps in conference play, and it's one thing for Utah State to sweep somebody, right? Like we'll talk about in a minute. I mean, they're the best team in the conference, so it's not a shock to see them sweep somebody, right? And it's not a shock for a team at the bottom, Air Force, San Jose State, to get swept by somebody. But we've seen several sweeps now between teams that are near each other in the standings, right? New Mexico sweeps Grand Canyon. Boise sweeps New Mexico. Grand Canyon sweeps Boise. There was another one. Now tonight, Colorado State sweeps UNLV. Grand Canyon sweeps San Diego State. So there's certainly something to the fact that matchups matter, and doesn't mean that if any of those matchups have a third in the conference tournament, that it's definitely going to be won by the team that won twice. It's just something to kind of look at and pay attention, because once is a result, twice gets you on the path to a pattern, basically, right? So to wrap this one up here, 91-86 is the final. Nice win for Colorado State, and a good road win. I think I said last night that I wasn't sure that they had a lot of quality road wins. I forgot that they won at Grand Canyon. That was as good as it gets. So this kind of adds to it. Again, we know there's no home court advantage there for the Rebels, but winning away from home has not been something that the Rams have excelled at the last few years. I know last year they got hot at the end of the year and won a few games at Boise and a couple other places that were difficult to win at. But the last few years has not been their strength, because let's face it, it's difficult to win on the road in this conference. So good job by the Rams tonight going into Vegas and getting a win. They have a big game on Saturday. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. The War Beast, Utah State getting it done. I'll get to that game in a second. Dak says Boise's recent offensive showings were more fluke than fact. Yeah, if you're referring, Dax, to like Dylan Andrews, I mean, yeah. Now, Fielder's been more consistent than I want to give him credit for. I'll put those stats up in a minute. But the Andrews thing for sure seems to be he got hot for a week, right? And I kind of said that, where it was like Can he sustain it? If he can sustain it, they're going to be a problem. I really wasn't convinced that he would, because we had 20 games of evidence to the contrary at the start of the season where he wasn't lighting it up. And again, like, we know Mick Cronin's not an easy guy to play for, but if he could play, he'd be still playing at UCLA. Now, obviously, he has some ability, but if you're going to get 3 good games out of him out of the season out of 30, that's not worth it. I don't want to say it's not worth it. It's not a good enough return on your investment, right? And that's why Cronin kind of said, find somewhere else to play. We're not really you're not in our plans for next year. And it seemed like a good fit for Boise, because they need a point guard and a little bit of scoring. And he played for a Big Ten school last year and all that stuff. But yeah, I agree with you, Dax. That wasn't really what he is all around, right? As far as tonight, they did have good D for the first 10, 12, 13, 14 minutes. And that's what I said. Like, their D was the best unit on the floor for the first 13 or 14 minutes. There's no doubt about it. Utah State wasn't sharp early on. And Boise on the other end wasn't great offensively either. Utah State's D wasn't bad either. Their D was solid all night. But the Boise defense was really good early. And then, the halftime score is 30-23. So it's not like the Boise defense was bad. If you tell Leon Rice, we're going to hold Utah State to 30 in the first half, Leon Rice would say, where do I sign? And so would any coach in this league or outside of this league in the spectrum. You hold Utah State to 30. So 30-23, sign me up for that. Anybody, right? You can't complain about that at all, right? And I think it was Utah State's sharpest effort. And even in the second half, I didn't think, they played well. Their defense was very good. But this was just what I expected tonight out of Boise, to be honest. And I kind of said this last night. So for once, I kind of got one right. They come off that game Friday night. It's just a killer morale-wise. I mean, I have no idea how the practices were. You probably will never get a good answer out of anybody on it, because they're not going to, unless Leon comes out and says, we practiced like crap last night. Coaches don't really like to say that, okay, unless they got a message for their guys. And it's beyond messages at this point for this Bronco team, right? So I don't think you're going to hear that, they practice like crap. But, taking yourself inside the mind of the players after what happened on Friday, I said last night it was going to be difficult for them to dig in. I said they would show up to play. It's a quasi rivalry. You got embarrassed by them on your home floor. I said they'll show up to play and it'll be competitive for a little bit. But once they get down by 8, are they really going to dig in for those loose balls and really dig in to get that stop on defense and really push yourself beyond the max of whatever? When you're down by 8, 10, 12, and the herd is all over you. And I thought the answer was no. And that's kind of what you saw. This was not a good effort for them. Credit Utah State for cranking their D up. But that was, I think, a little bit more to do with the fact that Boise was just kind of, I hate to say going through the motions, but it wasn't a very good effort from Boise tonight. It just was not. Mile High, I didn't see these until, and I was talking about your game earlier. Definitely the best they've looked since conference play started. Because, look, remember, their first game in conference play was that 40-point beatdown in Logan when Jorgensen got hurt, and it was a nightmare, and they started poorly after that. They had that win at Grand Canyon, but that was really more about a bad Grand Canyon effort. It was a decent game that night by the Rams, but they didn't look anywhere near the way they look tonight. They definitely look legit tonight. And, they could be dangerous in March if they continue to play like that. There's no doubt about it, right? Muniz has given them the leadership they've played, been looking for all season. He played awesome. You guys that have listened to me know that I coached Jev for a year, almost not quite a full season, but almost a year. And I've known him for a long, long time. And I'm really happy to see him contributing at the level that he is, right? He went through a recruitment period out of high school where he wasn't a high recruit at all. So he went to, and he was struggling to get offers at the D1 level. And he went the prep route. And then the only thing he could find was Delaware State in my home state here, about 30 minutes away. They're a horrible MEAC program. I mean, horrible. Like, when he went there 5 years ago, they're looking at like 2-20, whatever it was, right? And I would see him in the summer and I'd ask him how, and he'd say, yeah, we're going to be better. And, he was clearly their best player, but they just had nothing around him. Then he went to, I guess it was FGCU, Florida Gulf Coast. So he leveled up and played really well for that program in the Atlantic Sun last year, but nowhere near at this level. So I was really happy to know that he was coming to this level. Curious to see how he would do, knowing that he had the ability. And I'm really happy to see him contribute the way he has. He knows he's not like the number one option offensively. And I think maybe once in a while, it's not like he never shoots. He doesn't force shots much. He runs the offense. And I think he's been their best player for a while. There's no doubt Mahai Slater played well tonight. He had that bad turnover late, but he played well. That back cut he made was fantastic. That's just like a high IQ play, right? I'm not saying that Pasquarelli or MacGyver don't make that play, but I don't know that they do. Late in the shot clock, you're under pressure. The wheels are starting to come off a little bit. And as a young guy with not much experience this year, because look, they've been taught that, right? They've been taught to do that. But with a minute and a half left in the game or whatever was left at that point, and the pressure getting to you, and not that it's super loud in there, but a lot of things are running through your mind. For you to make that cut, catch that pass and lay it in, nice play by the youngster Slater. Fantastic. Yeah, 100%, Dax. I thought that too watching it. It's going to take something really dramatic for Falslev to not win Player of the Year. I think what would have to happen, honestly, and this is probably the only way that it happens, is if UNLV beats the Aggies again when they play in Vegas. I don't even know when that game is, but if the Rebels sweep the Aggies and Gibbs Lawhorn has like 4 more games where he scores 30 points. Okay. If they beat, UNLV would have to win a couple because again, they lost tonight, but if they beat Nevada and they beat the Aggies and they win another game in there and they finish like 12-8 and they finish in like 6th place or whatever it is. And he's got like literally over half of the games in conference play where he's scoring over 30 points. I think that's the only way that Falslev doesn't win the Player of the Year. And at that point, I'm not even saying I would vote for Gibbs Lawhorn. I'm just saying, like, knowing how voters are, that's the only thing that could probably change it. Daniel, what's going on? Yeah, absolutely. Got to highlight the the Utah State defense, right? They just clamped down 100%. Boise looked like they wanted no part of it. I mean, yeah, not only were they stuck at 23 for 10 minutes, they were stuck on that for like 45 minutes of like real time, like honestly, because it was like 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the first half with the TV timeout built in there. I think Leon had like a challenge late, so there was another timeout. Then we have like an 18-minute halftime, and then we have like 10 minutes of real time in the second half. It was honestly like 40 to 45 minutes of real time where they didn't score a point. So if you were watching with the sound off, you probably thought the graph and only half paying attention, you probably thought the graphics were frozen because there was like nobody, like they didn't score forever. It was wild. So that you need to you credit your opponent because they have to be playing good defense, but you have to take some of that ownership on yourself. You have to score by accident in that long of a stretch of time. But yeah, great job by Utah State. I mean, they threw in a bunch of threes in the last few minutes when the game was decided in the last 4 minutes, because before that, man, they were stuck they were looking at like a 20-point half, and they only scored 23 in the first half. Yet a bad year for Boise. That's it, D-Rex. They just don't have it. They don't have it. They have some pieces, and on a given night, I don't want to compare it to UNLV, but on a given night, they can beat you. Maybe some of it's matchup dependent. They swept New Mexico. May keep the Lobos out of the tournament. Because every loss that Boise takes here just hammers them down in the net further and further, right? And so it's not been a good year for them. I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. Fielder's been okay, like I said. Buchanan's been okay. Let me pull these numbers up here. So the final 75-56. I mean, it was a 20-plus point game, almost all the second half. Aggies shoot 55%, Broncos shoot 37%. So 7 for 22 from deep for the Broncos, and most, half of those makes there were in garbage time in the last 4 minutes. 12 turnovers for Boise, only 7 for Utah State. Boise out rebounds them. I mean, that's one of the things they excel at. Paint points, 40 to say that 5 times fast, 40 to 24 in favor of Utah State. If we look at some individual stuff here, let me take this off the screen and I'll kind of go back to it. I don't want to hide myself on there. You guys can look at the stats if you want to, but Falslove 17, 7 of 14 shooting. He just makes the right plays when it's necessary. The other team makes a little spurt, he'll pop a little floater in. The other team, it gets a stop or two, he'll come up with a steal at the other end. He'll dive on the floor to flip the momentum. He just makes shots and makes plays when they're important. Drake Allen, only 4 on 1 of 7 shooting. Took a lot of those early and didn't really make a lot. 6 assists, though, so that helps. Collins just kind of steady. He's fallen off his torrid pace. And I kind of said the other day, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't even know that I would have him first team anymore. Not that he's not playing poorly. He certainly deserves all league recognition and will be on it somewhere, first, second, or third team. He might get newcomer of the year. Who knows? Keller was really good early, 10 points, 7 boards. Elamine, 10 points. He's good for knocking in a clutch 3 every time. He didn't get a ton from the bench. Clark made a 3. Templin made a 3. Boise, Andrews, 9 points, 4 of 11 shooting. 2 assists, just not good enough. Carmichael, he's been disappointing this year, 2 points on 1 of 6 shooting. Meadow, at least he took 7 shots tonight. He was 3 for 4 guy for like much of the last month, and I've said he'd need more shots. 3 of 7 tonight, so that's not super. It's not poor, but it's not super. Fielder, 5 for 12. He had 14 and 8, so he was their best player on the stat sheet tonight. Buchanan, 1 for 7 for 5 points, just not good enough. He's a more talented guy than that. You need more out of him. The bench, NATO, he's kind of like Andrews. It's funny. We give Andrews all the flack, and early in the year, I was like, this NATO guy, he's kind of like MacGyver for Colorado State, to be honest, right? But then he had like a really good 1 to 2 week stretch, and it seemed like he's going to turn the corner and become like a legit guy. And we said maybe he deserves Andrews minutes. He doesn't really deserve those minutes. He, 4 points, did have 3 assists. He didn't turn the ball over, but 1 for 4. I didn't really notice him out there much. I really didn't. Parolin hit a late 3 that meant nothing. 9 points for him. So they just don't have it this year. They don't. It's just not a good enough roster. And maybe it's just one of those things where Degenhart was that important. We know how important he was, right? How much of a leader he was, how much how good of a player he was. Maybe it's just a simple fact that he masked some of the flaws that existed beyond him. Now, there were some other good players in the last few years that Degenhart was there, clearly, right? They made the NCAA tournament a couple times and almost made it last year again, with Degenhart being like the key guy for 3 years. But maybe it was just you remove him from it, and this is what the program is, and that's what I think a lot of the fan base's a lot of the fan base's frustrations lie. Right? We'll say because it just hasn't been good for them. Boise runs a motion offense. Without motion, it won't work. Pretty simple, yeah, Preston. Pretty sure we've seen that. Yeah. Clearly the offense has not been super this year. It's tough. I don't know what the solution is. Ewok, no problem. I mean, like I said, it is late. I can't believe it's 2:15 already. I knew it would be a later night. I was probably planning on not being on here as long as I was the other night because there were only the 2 games. I'll look at the Saturday stuff in a minute. Dax, they seem disjointed. You were at the game, saw several instances of players fighting amongst themselves. Yeah, that's never good. That's something you can really only get if you're in person. So I appreciate that perspective there, Dax, because the camera will often not catch that unless it's really obvious and blatant and something that's kind of crossing the line where the coach has to address it or something, because that's not good. You don't want that. And again, I think that all ties into what I said last night and why I wasn't surprised by the result tonight, because that's what happens when you blow games away. You blew the Friday night game against UNLV. That's what happens when you play good for as long as you had for that little 3 to 4 week stretch here, and then you lay an egg at Grand Canyon, and then you have that meltdown against UNLV. Like you don't. it's very difficult to have each other's backs and be all in 100% for your teammates the way you were at the start of the season or when you're playing good when those kind of things happen. So, I'm not surprised to hear it. Of course, it's disappointing. And as a Boise fan, I'm sure it's very disappointing, but I'm not totally surprised by it. Yeah, Caleb, I mean, look, Gibbs Lawhorn, he's just a machine right now. He really is. He did brick a couple late, but I mean, for crying out loud, he makes half of his threes, and that's not easy to do, especially since, like, as the last whatever, he's numero uno on the opposing coach's scouting report, right? Like, I mean, everybody knows he's the guy. There were plenty of times tonight where Ali tried to run two guys at him to get the ball out of his hands. It's just difficult to do all the time. So, he is playing very good. Dale says not good enough, Leon. Offense was stagnant. Where's the improvement? I mean, I can't argue with any of that. What's up, Steinbauer? I can't argue with any of that. It's not good enough. I know it's easy to call for changes right now. It's difficult to implement those changes. It's not, let's just say this, it's not as easy to implement those changes as we would want them to be. Dax, is this the year that UNLV finally makes a semis in a tournament? If there was ever a year, it would be this year, because we know, with the exception of Utah State, and I know the Aztecs have the potential, but with the exception of Utah State, the top, our teams are weaker than they were last year, right? And so, like UNLV's got a player who's on an absolute heater, and they have pulled more upsets than past years. We know this is what they are every year. They can lose to anybody, they can beat anybody, and they do that half of their games, right? This year seems to be like an exception. And so, I wouldn't bet against them. We'll see who they draw. But another 30 piece. I didn't even see that until the end, because he was in the mid-20s. He was piling them up, but man, that's impressive. Depends on seeding, Caleb says, and matchups to you. Sitting in the 6th spot. Oh, that's to the UNLV with Nevada. So that's who UNLV has. Nevada at home for the Rebels, San Diego State in Viejas, and Utah State at home. So, I mean, look, it's going to be tough to win 2 of those 3. I mean, you got to figure, if you're a UNLV fan, it's not going to be easy, but you got to figure you have to win that Nevada game, and then you try to split against the top 2 teams in the conference. It doesn't help that you're at San Diego State, and Utah State will want revenge. So it's not going to be easy to win either one of those, but they can do it, as we've seen. That's a fair point, War Beast. Them playing at the top, they probably don't even want to play at the Thomas and Mack. Like it's probably like a mental thing. Like they know that they're going to have like the 7th most fans out of the teams there that day, and it's like, this is a joke. It's our home court, so can we go play somewhere else? Unfortunately, they cannot. You're right. They wouldn't take an NIT bid. Crown, maybe. I still don't think so. I don't think so. Like Bird and Gwath are going to hit the road as soon as the season ends, because they're going to prep for the draft or whatever it is. You think it's a 1 bid, 1 and done. I still think we're going to get 2, and I do think Utah State can win a game. They can. We'll see who the matchup is. Maybe it won't be a good matchup. Last year, they got smoked by UCLA, but they were trending down at that point because they had played really well until the last month when the matchup got figured out. Cronin, for all his flaws and how wonky and goofy he can be with stuff, he knows what he's doing as an X and O guy. So he was ready for that zone. And the Bruins just, they just took it to the Aggies from the start. We'll see, as long as the Aggies don't tail off. And I think they've been playing good, right? I think they can win. It doesn't mean they will, but Aggies look dominant on defense tonight, playing a lot better. Yeah, it's funny. I just said that, right? And I hadn't even read your comment yet. They haven't hit that wall. Calhoun's switching defenses, a switching man, playing a little zone, mixing different stuff in to keep teams off balance, so they can't just prep for the matchup zone and figure it out, and then it's worthless at that point, like it was late February and March. And so, I agree. They're not in that spot where they were last year. Do I think Cronin's at UCLA after the season? So it's funny, like 6 weeks ago when I first kind of talked, not that Utah State fans didn't know this, but when I first started talking about the Calhoun issue and saying that like he's the favorite for the Cincinnati job, I said the only thing that might save you is if Cronin wants to go back there. Now, maybe he did all along, and this is just his way of kind of like making it an easier separation here at UCLA, because he's been more ornery than normal over the last few weeks. Like goofy stuff, man. Like chasing his own guy off the floor. He's complaining about everything. Like they've slipped down to the bubble now. They might not even get in. Who knows, right? And so when you see stuff like that happen, it would not surprise any of us now if he's like, all right, let me just go back to Cincinnati. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong on this, but, I know he's close with his father, and they used to show him all the time during the tournament games. I'm assuming he's not in the best of health and that he still lives back in the Midwest out there. And so maybe he wants to go back and coach where he got it started at Cincinnati, or had his most success actually at Cincinnati. Although I guess he did make the Final Four here with UCLA a few years ago. But I think it's probably 50-50, maybe even more than 50-50 that he's gone. That could save Utah State, because I don't think Calhoun jumped ship for any job the way that I thought Pitino would last year, right? And I really don't think Olin does either. Now, if Cronin bolts, I could easily see Olin being the UCLA coach next year. I hate to say that, I don't want Lobo fans screaming at me, but that seems like a natural fit. There will be other guys in the mix for it for sure, so it's not a layup, but he seems like a fit there. And if Cronin bolts, what's bad for or what's good for Utah State might be bad for New Mexico. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, the more that he just acts goofy and weird, kind of tells me that maybe he's just had it with everything. Like, he's complained so many times about the travel. Maybe he's just over it. I don't know. Yeah, Hefty, we're kind of just talking about that. They are absolutely 100%. Boise needs to extend Leon. Yeah, I don't think they'll extend him. I think they'll just let the contract play out, and then Leon will probably just go and ride off into the sunset. Their offense really does struggle. It's a common theme this year for a lot of our teams, because, Han, I think that GCU and Nevada are the same way. They really struggle in the half court. Maybe some more than others at times, but I don't know. Preston, you think they quit on multiple plays? Yeah, doesn't surprise me. Every night, different player says up for the Aggies. Yeah, Keller tonight. I haven't been very fond of Keller much of the year, but he was big tonight, especially at the start, to get them off to a good start. Leon won that. Yeah, Leon won that challenge, and I was pissed because I wanted to tweet out that they didn't score the last 6 minutes. I was like, oh man, they're going to get a shot off here, but they missed it anyway. Leon, not only did Leon win the challenge, but he got a tee. That was such a pointless tee. There's 4 minutes left. There was zero issue with the officiating in that game, right? Of all the games in the conference this year where we've been complaining about officials, I didn't think there was anything to complain about in this game. They got whipped from start to, well, I wouldn't say from start to finish. They got whipped tonight, and it had zero to do with the officials. So I don't know. Maybe I do think there's a part of me thinks that Leon got that tee just to kind of let the herd get on him a little bit and kind of give them one. The game was out of reach. There's no point in getting it. What was he doing unless he's just kind of playing off of the herd? I don't know. Pretty funny. Yeah, I agree, Roddy. They did a nice job. They didn't overblow the whistle. It was fantastic. Thank you for reposting the stream. Very good. A cleanly played game. Yeah, someone's taking care of business. That's right. The Aggies are doing that. UNLV, Han says, is one of the most talented rosters. When they put it together, they're scary. Their schedule certainly is there for them to slip in to an 8-9 game, which would put them likely against Utah State, and they've already beaten them. So we'll see. Fielder only won in double figures. Yeah, no good there. Also, Rex Steiner. Yeah, he was back up to his old horse tricks tonight, just firing shots in. Yeah, Roar Beast, I just said that. What was Leon's tech about? Yeah, I you're right. I think he just did it to kind of tip his cap to the herd and say, he appreciates that stuff. I know people give him a hard time, and it's like BJ. People give him a hard time. People like Leon and BJ, they respect people that can kind of give him crap, right? Doesn't mean they like it, but they respect it. Like, Leon's no dummy. He's coached for long enough. They're students. Like, he doesn't expect them to be like, oh, there's the opposing coach. There's Leon Rice. Like, we're going to be nice to him. He expects to get crap from them. So if I was in his shoes, I'd be a wise arse too sometimes and be like, yeah, I'd give it back to him. Now, you got to watch how you do it because you are representative of your school. But, him getting a T there, maybe, who knows, maybe the cameras didn't catch. Maybe he like winked over or gave a thumbs up to the herd. It wouldn't surprise me like that's what it was all about because it had zero bearing on the game, and he knew that. Yeah, Alonzo, absolutely. Carmichael was very promising last year, and I'm disappointed in what he's done this year. Stick, you still think that Dillon's their best all-around player? I would think now lately it's probably slightly Fielder over Buchanan. Buchanan's been hot and cold. Fielder, as much as I didn't want to give him credit, if I coach Boise, what would you do? Would you shorten a rotation? I guess it's funny because for all these years, Leon's lived with a short rotation, and now this year he seemingly has more guys, and it's not working. So, it's just odd that this year of all years, he chooses to like extend his rotation, and now it's kind of gone to like hell. Maybe he should have just stayed with a tighter rotation and lived with some of the mistakes from the guys that he has and cut some of the minutes from some of the other guys. If you coach Boise, you get a guard from the G League. I agree that would probably. It's funny. Does Falslov's lack of a left hand ever going to impact the game? It seems like it will be a straightforward scout. It's funny, Hefty. When I was coaching like really long time ago at the high school level at a pretty high level, we had a guy who transferred in from the city, and he had never played like organized ball before. He was like a rec league, like park player, and he was an absolute stud athlete, but he could not dribble with his left hand. I'm talking like he would cross the court dribbling like with his right hand with the ball in front of him, like basically with the defender in front of him because he couldn't dribble with his left hand. Now, that's not how bad it is for Falslev, but clearly you want to force him to the left. And it's amazing because that's like the stuff that I was a stickler for when you guys asked me, and the offensive X and O questions are a little more difficult for me. I could talk about it, but I was much more of a defensive coach when I was an assistant or a head coach. It didn't matter. I wanted to focus on the defense, and that stuff would drive me nuts when I would have the scout and say, this guy cannot and does not want to go left, and then make him go left. He doesn't want to go left, cut off his right hand, and then 2 possessions later into the game, he's given a jab step or a head fake, and he's driving right for a layup. But the thing of it is, again, you gotta keep in mind some of these things. The game's moving too fast for some players. Some guys have really high IQs out there, and some don't. And it's difficult because there's a lot going on. You're also tired. You're fatigued if you've been in for 5 minutes, and sometimes you forget. Maybe you got switched off onto him, and you were just guarding somebody else, and you're like, well, he's a shooter, so now I got to crowd him, and now you're guarding Falslev, and you kind of forget that, I got to make him go left. So it is frustrating to watch. It's not as easy as we would want it to be, unfortunately. Preston, Carmichael had 24 minutes and 2 more points than you. Yep, 2 more than all of us. Can't happen. Yeah, I mean, you can hope that your guys peak at the right time. They might for a game. I just don't see it happening consistently enough for several games. Utah State, Han thinks plays connected on defense. And he's accurate right here. They rarely have miscommunications that lead to easy buckets. That's a key thing, right? Like, you don't have to play like the best, defense as far as blocking shots and getting steals. Can you avoid breakdowns? Can you avoid what I just talked about? Getting beat on a back door, not communicating on a screen and letting the guy slip it for an easy layup, falling asleep and letting a shooter wide open from behind the arc, right? We've seen countless incidents this year of coaches calling timeouts after breakdowns. Leon's done it. Sundance Wicks has done it. Olin's done it. I'm sure Dutch has done it. Plenty of coaches do it, because that's stuff that shouldn't happen, even though I just said a minute ago it's difficult, right? Because you go over to stuff. And for some coaches, they stress defense more than offense. Calhoun, I think, has really put an emphasis on it this year because it did cost them at the end of last year. And it is impressive, as you said, because they've done a really nice job with it. Sick thinks Cronin needs to go. Maybe he will. I don't know. Olin seems like a star. And yeah, I think it's 50, maybe 60-40 that they keep him. this year. I think it's 90-10 that they can keep him past next season. I think, if they get another year out of him, they're lucky and they should take it. Fielder isn't good enough on D for you. You like Andrews because Andrews is a good defender. I will give him that. He is a good defender. And yeah, Boise might not have a reliable option to get a bucket when you need one in crunch time. I would probably agree with that. All right, let me get to tomorrow's stuff. I'm on here for 48 minutes. I want to shut it down in a few minutes. Let me put this up quickly. We'll just go over these. Now, this here has I have the 2 games from tonight on there, followed by the early 2 games. These are Eastern time on Saturday. No Friday games again. These are the early 2 on Saturday. Obviously, we don't really need to talk about the UNLV Air Force game. We heard Tim Miles on here last night. Spartans going up to Boise. I mean, look, the way Boise played tonight, they'll be in for a dogfight if they don't watch it on Saturday. And maybe it doesn't really matter as much to them, right? I mean, it'll matter to Leon. He's going to coach his guys up and try his best. But sometimes, you just can't. What do they say? You can't get blood out of a stone, right? So there's no guarantee that they show up and look good and do anything but win by 1 or 2. And again, I think the Spartans will have confidence going up there after a good win last night. And so we'll see what happens. Obviously, you're going to favor Boise there, but that's not a layup by any means. Now, let's get to the 4 big games. So CSU, San Diego State in the middle of the day, 6 Eastern, so that's 4 Mountain for you guys out there. That's a very interesting game in Fort Collins, so we know it's an altitude game, not the Aztecs' favorite. They did win a couple of those this year for sure. They did, okay? But now we got the Rams playing good basketball, and we got the Aztecs reeling. They played a poor second half last night. They laid an egg. That doesn't happen much to that program. They laid an egg. Do they bounce back or not? I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, I'm sure most, people are going to say, yeah, they'll bounce back. I mean, they'll be a slight favorite in that game. But, if the Rams play the way they played tonight and the Aztecs played the way they played last night, that's going to go down to the wire, and the Rams have a very good shot at winning that game. Now, that's no guarantee that both of those things work out that way, but that is far from it wasn't even a gimme 2 weeks ago, but it looked like that's a game that, San Diego State wins 9 out of 10 times. Now that's probably 6.5 out of 10. Okay. So we'll see. Wyoming at Grand Canyon, rematch of the very first game in conference play way back 2.5 months ago-ish, it seems, when Wyoming was flying high. Grand Canyon was struggling in Laramie. Grand Canyon's first ever conference game. They're going to struggle in the altitude. They're not playing good, and Grand Canyon went up there and smoked them. So maybe this is just a bad matchup for Wyoming, and Grand Canyon smokes them again. Can they? And they've shown the ability to do this already, but can they respond off of a big win the way they got last night in Viejas? Right? New Mexico at Fresno. Talked about this one a little bit last night, how it's kind of a little bit of a sleepy, trappy spot here. Now, Olin seems above that mostly, but Fresno has some bite to them. That's the difference here. This isn't San Jose State largely or Air Force, right? Fresno's got some bite, provided Hydrater and Douglas are back, okay, or at least Hydrater. You like to have both of them back if you're Fresno, but as long as Hydrater's back and they have some shooting out there, they will hang around in this game for a while. I do think. This isn't going to be a 20-point runaway for the Lobos. And then, because remember, when they played the first time in the pit, Collins didn't play. He was like a late scratch because I think Wahlberg just, he wasn't 100%. Wahlberg knew if he wasn't 100%, he wasn't going to be effective, and his squad had no chance without Collins. So he sat him, and then they didn't have a chance. But Collins makes a difference. So we'll see. That'll be an interesting game. And then the last one on FS1, 10 Eastern, Utah State at Nevada. Interesting here because what do we get out of Nevada, right? What do we get out of Nevada? They hadn't really laid an egg all year. They laid an egg last night. And now, a lot of deflation again. Is that a word? Deflation? Same as with Boise tonight from last Friday. Same thing with Nevada now, okay? 0 chance at an at-large. I know it was unlikely before last night, but 0% at an at-large now. Their seeding's taking a hit. Their morale's taking a hit. Couldn't have been fun to watch that film. Couldn't have been fun to practice today. And, they'll be at home and they may get a good crowd. I don't think it'll be rocking, right? They're going to want to beat Utah State, quasi-rival. maybe the last time they play, although did they? Oh, no, that was football. They signed a home and home. Maybe the last time they play against the Aggies here at Lawler. And so, they're going to want to get it. But again, same with Boise. Are they going to dig in when they're down like 8 late in the first half and really kind of get after it the way that they did in November when the slate was clean? I have my doubts. And on top of that, their ceiling is limited offensively. Now, they're at home and they played them tough in Logan. So, there are some things in their favor, but I need to see it that they're going to come out and really buy in and dig in before I say, like, this is going to be a good game. I don't know. Okay, let me get caught up on a few of these for a minute, and then I'm going to hit the road. What else did I miss here? So Lonzo Ball can do it all. Rooting for the Lobos. Make the tourney. Well, I hope they do too. 23s on Saturday. Sick is hoping for a Boise miracle in the conference tournament. Would like to see the Lobos in a dance with an at-large. Yeah, I think that'll be great. The Aztecs played one of the most selfish offensive games you've seen. Yeah, I was going to say, before I even read the end of your comment, it's so funny. They need Harrington back, right? They were out of sorts offensively. I texted that real early in the game when Henley made that steal and that dunk. I said that the Aztecs were out of sort. They never got it in gear. They need Harrington big time. Nevada's got to find a way to win Saturday. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't know that I have faith in them to do that anymore, but we'll see. I've been wrong before. Just because I kind of got the one right tonight with Utah State winning big doesn't mean that I get them all right. As we know, I've certainly been wrong before. So okay, that's gonna do it. Almost an hour. I'm good to go there. One more shout out to Sun Cruiser, your lemonade iced tea mix here. They have other flavors as well. And at the bottom, please subscribe to the pod. Had several do it last night after the show, and I appreciate that. So please do it if you have not already done so at Mountain West BNN. Appreciate all of you being here. It's late. It's 2:30, 2:40 my time, 12:40 for most of you Mountain, 11:40 if you're on a Pacific time zone out west. So I appreciate y'all being here late Wednesday night. Now, don't forget, no Friday show because there's no games. Saturday should be straightforward. Boise plays early in the afternoon, so BJ will get his show done early. There's one game at 10 Eastern, and it's that Utah State, Nevada. So 10 Eastern, which will be 10:15, ends at 12:15-ish Eastern, 10:15 Mountain. We'll go on right away. We'll see if we get anybody on as a guest. We'll see. That was cool last night to have both Tim Miles and Jaden Henley on. So we'll see what we can dig up for Saturday. But that'll be that. Nothing Friday. And then look, we got 2.5 weeks left. 5 games left for everybody. Getting interesting. Start digging into some more seeding, some conference races and all that stuff, at-large stuff as we move forward here over the next couple weeks. So appreciate all you guys being here. You're the best. Wouldn't be doing this if you guys weren't here to contribute. And come back a few days from now, 3 days from now, here and join me on another night in Mountain West. Get some rest. Appreciate you all. Good night.
Get ready for the time of your life at Circa Resort and Casino, Las Vegas's newest destination for fun, featuring the world's biggest poolside tailgate party with 3 levels of action, 6 pools, and a 143-foot screen. The fun is always on deck with all the games all year long. Stadium Swim, located in downtown Las Vegas on Fremont Street. Book the time of your life today at circalasvegas.com.